Last week, we heard from two sources about what it feels like to live with food insecurity and its effect on daily life. This week, we shift our focus to two organizations that are helping people put food on their table. As prices for everything remain high, the need has grown. A family of four with two parents and two children that have an income of about $32,000 a year fall below the poverty level. According to the latest U.S. Census, about 13% of households, or 17 million families nationwide, meet this criteria and get government assistance. This can mean food credits, discounted health insurance, housing subsidies, and other resources. But there's another, much larger group who earn just above the poverty level and are also chronically struggling to get by. United for ALICE, a national research initiative, defines this population as the working poor. They're employed and often holding down multiple jobs, but what they make doesn't stretch far enough to cover rent, healthcare, food, and other basic living costs. By ALICE's measure, 42% of U.S. households today fall into this class.
ALICE is someone that we all know, but perhaps not by name. And ALICE is an acronym: Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. So if we start just thinking about the workers that we know, that we rely on a daily basis: childcare workers, home health aides, delivery drivers, bank tellers, security guards, folks that we need to keep our economy running smoothly, yet struggle to support their own families.
That's Stephanie Hoops, the national director of United for ALICE. Hoops gets into how the current system goes against working people who earn just above the federal poverty level.
They're still struggling, but they're not eligible for things like SNAP and TANF and some of the most common government programs. So as a result, they are limited to basically nonprofit programs that don't have income requirements. And probably the most common of those are food banks and food pantries.
To provide some context, she breaks down how the government calculated the federal poverty level and who gets these benefits when the system was created back in the 1960s.
At the time, there was a consensus that food should be a third of your budget. So they calculated what it costs to feed a family of four and multiplied it by 3. And literally, that number has been ticked up by the Consumer Price Index ever since. And it's the same number across the country, so it doesn't reflect the variation, the difference in cost of living from Manhattan to Mississippi, from Indiana to Texas. And so that's out of kilter, but also it hasn't adjusted to what you really need to live and work in the modern economy.
This often includes a working phone, car, and other items. These are all extra costs that weren't factored into the original calculation that was set 60 years ago. Often, these items take priority in order for people to keep working and living, so other essentials, like buying healthy, nutritious foods, get cut. On the ground, food pantries are seeing this shift in recent years as already tight budgets become even tighter.
We all know that the price of housing and groceries and just the general cost of living is elevated right now. And so having enough to put food on the table for your family is a challenge for a lot of households. So if asked to pinpoint a specific demographic that we serve, it's really impossible because so often it's anyone. A lot of people are surprised that sometimes it's their neighbors. It's somebody they don't necessarily anticipate being food insecure, but it is currently impacting 1 in 5 households in the Chicago metro area that experience food insecurity. And when we talk about households with children, that number goes down to 1 in 4.
That's Camerin Mattson, the communications manager at the Greater Chicago Food Depository. The organization supplies food for food banks, soup kitchens, shelters, and other programs across the Chicagoland area. They also have a team that helps people in need apply for resources they qualify for, like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP. And this need has grown. Last year, the Greater Chicago Food Depository and its partners served 2.4 million households. That's 64% more visitors than in 2021.
Of the 2.4 million households visits we had in 2024, about 13% each month were households coming for the first time. And so, I think it's just the challenges of finances that are bringing people in that haven't necessarily needed to use these resources in the past.
And behind the scenes, keeping shelves stocked to meet this demand is another challenge. In 2024, Mattson says the depository purchased almost 40% of the food it provided to its network. This was possible through supporter donations. The second largest funding source was from the government.
Another 28% of our food came from the federal government via the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And then the remaining 33% was donated by food distributors and manufacturers or rescued from food retailers. And so it's really this kind of three-pronged source of food that we have that provides what we need to get to our neighbors and feed this vast network.
While the Greater Chicago Food Depository serves millions each year, it's one part of a larger resource network. Mattson says food banks can't replace the support the government provides through food assistance programs like SNAP. If this federal funding is cut, much of the burden will fall back on individual states.
Historically, SNAP benefits were 100% federally funded, and Illinois, for example, could be required to pay up to $800 million annually to keep SNAP available for our neighbors. And so, obviously, most states are not equipped to bridge this gap. And as much as food banks like ours want to help, we just don't have the scale for this. Because for every meal a food bank like the Food Depository provides, SNAP provides the equivalent of 9 meals. So the need that will be created with some of these reductions is more than we're equipped to handle.
While federal programs like SNAP are the backbone of food assistance, Hoops highlights how some states, schools, and other local nonprofits are stepping up with creative solutions to help families in need.
We're seeing some great action across the country, all different kinds of stakeholders stepping up, good action at state and local governments. May 1st in Hawaii, the state legislature approved expanding free school meal access to cover more children and specifically to help ALICE families.
These kinds of programs can ease the strain for families in the short term. But Hoops feels that the bigger long-term picture is still troubling. The fragility of today's labor market leaves millions of households on shaky ground.
Of all adults in the U.S., only 22% have the security of a full-time salary job. And that means the rest are working hourly paid or part-time or looking for work or are out of the workforce. And I think that helps sum up the precarious nature of our economy right now.
The reality is sobering. But there are resources out there and ways to get involved. So where can households turn for help if they need it? Hoops says this is the best first step.
That's to dial 211 on your phone and connect to the reference and referral service that links you to resources that are in your community. So 211 is across the country, but when you call in from a location, it goes to the resources that are in that location. And it's run by United Ways and state governments across the country. And it's also available online. So you could go to 211.org. And that's probably the fastest way to be connected to things that meet your needs and fit your situation.
Beyond seeking help, there are also ways for listeners to support the fight against food insecurity. Food banks and nonprofits depend on volunteers, donations, and advocacy to keep shelves stocked and programs running. Even small contributions of time or resources can make a difference in your community. Looking ahead, food insecurity isn't just about empty pantries and fridges. It's about the constant trade-offs that individuals and families must make to survive. Local food banks and nonprofits are doing their part. But long-term progress depends on sustained investment and smart policy at every level of our government. To learn more about United for ALICE and the Greater Chicago Food Depository, as well as our guests this week, Stephanie Hoops and Camerin Mattson, visit viewpointsradio.org. This segment was written by our executive producer, Amira Zaveri. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson.